What we're doing here is replumbing the entire financial system.
And he's going to demystify very complicated concepts like on-chain, tokenization, and digital assets for us.
Essentially, think of any asset and it can be tokenized.
How are you seeing the tokenization journey of Dubai?
Dubai is one of the few global centers for digital assets today. And then a business environment which is very conducive to building new technologies, adopting new technologies, attracting entrepreneurs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Live, Work, and Play in Dubai podcast for Economic Times. As always, I'm your host, Shraddha Bhandari, and I'm joined by a very interesting guest today. And he's going to demystify very complicated concepts like on-chain, tokenization, and digital assets for us. His life, personal and professional, is really a confluence of cultures, geographies, and at the intersection of changing economic, finance, and tech. He spent years in investment banking, venture capital, and incubation platforms in Standard Chartered, and he's currently the CEO of SettleMint based in Dubai. He told me he's half Czech, half Indian, married to a Korean, and in his own words, he has a confused child. I would say he's an empowered child. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Adam Popat. Welcome, Mr. Adam.
Thank you, Shraddha. That's a very generous introduction. Thank you very much for having me.
It's all true. So let's delve into the podcast. My first question to you is really your story. You've been across geographies in some of the more mature markets and then the global south markets. And then you moved from banking, which was traditionally hostile to digital assets, and to now this entire stint at SettleMint. How would you rate your journey? What have been the key highlights of other markets? And how's the transition to Dubai been?
Yeah, fantastic. So I feel extremely privileged, right, to have had the journey that I've had. I'm a product, as you say, of different cultures, of parents who saw the value of travel and instilling different cultures in us. So, and then in my banking career, it was amazing to be part of a bank like Standard Chartered, how multicultural it was, how international it was. And I was really privileged to have the kind of journey that I had there. That bank in particular was very progressive when it came to digital assets. So it saw the opportunity for the technology to disrupt the entire financial system, back in 2015, 2016. So I was just very sort of, again, privileged to be at the right place at the right time.
Very modest.
Yeah. I made the bank's first investment in the digital asset space, and then I was one of the people who got to sort of lead that bank's journey into digital assets for the following 6 or 7 years. So there's really a pioneering journey, and that's where I came across the technology, and that's also where I came across SettleMint. So I got to know SettleMint very early on. SettleMint started in 2016 as well, so also extremely early. I got to know the co-founders, Matthew and Roderick, very well early on. I actually wanted to invest from the bank into SettleMint. We didn't quite get there for internal reasons, nothing to do with the company. And then we kept in touch, and it was a very natural place for me to come and help the company get to the next level.
And this transition from banking to technology then was very smooth for you because you're already doing something like that in Central.
Yeah, exactly. I was the last couple of years I was working closely with the bank's venture capital and innovation unit, SC Ventures, who are still doing amazing things today. And therefore I was moving in that direction anyway, and working with tech companies, building them inside the bank, helping spin them out, investing in other tech companies. So it was quite a natural transition, and I was just very personally interested, right? I saw the power and the potential of the technology, and therefore wanted to dive in. So it was a very natural transition. The much harder transition is going from a very large bank to a small, scrappy startup. That's been the harder transition, to be honest.
No, perfect. And now you're in Dubai.
Yes.
Right, which a lot of people say is the center of the digital assets. They often say that Trump wanted to make America the crypto capital, but this is now de facto really become that. So in your journey here, transitioning here, living here, does do digital assets, tokenization, blockchain form part of the national priorities of the UAE and Dubai, would you say? And how does SettleMint with its work fit into these priorities?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Dubai is one of the few global centers for digital assets today. And really that's mostly being driven, well, there's a number of reasons for that, but the regulation and the regulators and their stance, their sort of positive, cooperative stance, trying to create regulation which is clear, is really, really driving that. And then on top of that, obviously you have, at a national scale, buy-in from the leadership, and then a business environment which is very conducive to, building new technologies, adopting new technologies, attracting entrepreneurs to the place. So I definitely, it's not by accident that I moved here, given our business, and it's definitely already paying dividends.
And just in terms of what SettleMint does, will you take us through the entire gambit of services you have, how it's playing out here, maybe some use cases?
Yeah, sure. So what we do is we specialize in supporting large institutions, primarily regulated institutions, in adopting digital assets and blockchain technology. And we do that through a platform and a set of capabilities that we've built, which we effectively give to our clients. They integrate it into their core systems, and then they can interact with blockchain. In today's world, most of that, the use cases which we're seeing at the moment are asset tokenization use cases. So that is really where we focused our efforts, our product development efforts over the last couple of years, and that's where we see the market is today. And within the asset tokenization space, you could broadly divide it into two categories. One would be financial assets, so banks, asset managers, financial markets participants, tokenizing things like bonds, equities, funds, stablecoins, etc. And then you have what in the jargon, in the industry jargon, is called real world assets, which tend to be at the moment real estate and increasingly also interest in commodities, precious metals, and things like that. And so what we effectively do is we give the technology to large organizations to be able to actually do that.
Understood. And you are based out of the DIFC, but invariably you have to interact with regulators like VARA. You're in touch with the Central Bank of the UAE. Then, of course, if you're doing real estate, then the DLD, etc. What are the kind of conversations you have with the regulators in Dubai, and how open to problem solving, progressiveness, learning from other markets have you found them to be?
Amazingly so. So extremely open, constructive, collaborative conversations. What's impressed me most is that the regulator, it's not sort of them and us, which you might see in other more established markets sometimes. They are in the room and they feel like they're a partner for growth. They really are trying to solve the regulation at the same time as the solutions are being put together and the technology is being developed. So extremely positive view and experience of the regulators, not just in Dubai, but more broadly in this region as well.
And was DIFC a choice because you're catering to banks, financial institutions, or were you attracted by the regulatory sandboxing? Were you sort of by the DFSA? What about the DIFC was what appealed to SettleMint?
So we've been in Dubai since 2018. We registered in the DIFC in 2020. So in digital asset years, we've been here a long time. And it was exactly that. So we're part of the innovation hub there. We get fantastic support, access through the innovation hub, a great network, great spaces to interact with clients, work. So the whole ecosystem that was built there from quite some time ago now has I think really flourished and helps companies like us in our journeys.
That's amazing. So with tokenization, you said that that's one of the major use cases that the product development team has been working on, and that's financial in the real world. In Dubai, we've been hearing a lot of real estate tokenization, right, with the DLD VARA and the projects that have come up recently, and I think they just went in for the secondary market with one of the projects. How are you seeing the tokenization journey of Dubai? Is it more on largely restricted to real estate at the moment, or are we seeing more financial sukuk sort of Sharia bonds, all of that. Stablecoins, of course, we now have an AED-backed stablecoin. So how are you seeing that journey in Dubai?
Yeah, so it's progressing at speed on all fronts. I think the real estate one is really exciting because you can kind of see full marketplaces, liquid marketplaces being developed, which has always been one of the things that has held the technology back, or the sort of application of the technology back over the first few years, is that you can tokenize things, but unless you create liquid marketplaces, then there's no real point, right? And I think with the real estate use case here in Dubai, certainly, Dubai took a leadership role when it came to that, right? They were the first out of the blocks. The other markets in this region have followed. Again, kudos to Dubai for being able to and having the courage to do that. But there are tokenization use cases which are progressing in the financial world as well. So we're speaking to a number of the large banks here today about their plans. As you say, the stablecoins, there are now 4 or 5 approved stablecoins. So multiple use cases developing at speed across the market.
How does it position Dubai with its sort of focus on tokenization? How does it sort of position it in the larger region? Is it increasing so as to say its geopolitical power? Is it like making it the model where you come and build in Dubai and then progress to other parts of the world? How are you looking at the growth of Dubai with these kind of initiatives?
Yeah, I see Dubai as the pioneer, and I think that's been true not just in this space. I think in other spaces as well. They're not afraid to do things first and maybe fail, but learn the lessons and try again. And that has extreme utility for the rest of the region, but also the rest of the world. So in that way, I think Dubai probably punches above its weight from a geopolitical perspective, I imagine. But being that pioneer, also then attracts companies like us to be here, because we know this is an environment that's conducive to innovating, building, pushing the boundaries, and so on.
And what is the next step from real estate? Can we see tokenization? Obviously, there are already gold-backed stable coins, and you're also looking to tokenize commodities. But what about oil? Is anyone working on sort of tokenization of oil futures, derivatives, prices?
Essentially, think of any asset, and it can be tokenized. And then once it's tokenized, it can be fractionalized, and then the tokenization leads to instant settlement, lower settlement risk, operational risks, lower capital requirements, lower liquidity requirements, more velocity in transactions, hopefully increased revenues, lower costs. The benefits are huge. We are seeing some really interesting new use cases. So there was a diamond use case here recently in Dubai, which is very interesting. We're in discussions with one potential client around mortgages. So the tokenization of mortgages, not wrapped, but the actual underlying mortgages. And then, I think the real estate one is on a path to widespread adoption. So, not just here in this region. We're running a very large project in Saudi, in Qatar. There's also projects going on. So thanks to Dubai's leadership, this is proliferating around the region.
And I'm guessing SettleMint is called SettleMint is because you wanted to go beyond just the issuance aspect, right? Because issuance is, like you said, is easy. But then the compliances, the settling, the secondary markets, all of that is what you're aiming to solve in this aspect.
Yeah, I always say tokenizing is easy to do it badly. There aren't that many people that do it extremely well, by which I mean to a high standard of security, safety, compliance, etc. And then, we differentiate ourselves in that on our platform, you can manage the entire life cycle of whichever asset you've tokenized, and we've pre-built all of that functionality into the platform. So it's extremely easy for a bank, if it wants to tokenize bonds, to take our platform and just rely on the whole life cycle within our platform. So that's one of our major differentiators.
And what are some of the challenges that can derail this train? Or do you think that this train is now off the station and nothing gets it back?
Yeah, I think the cat is out of the bag. I think, or the horse has bolted, or whatever analogy you want to use. What we're doing here is replumbing the entire financial system. And, in many ways, that's not very sexy, right? Like it's not, I don't think you're going to see this kind of chat GPT moment, right? Which AI has had. It's just going to be, one step after another, filling in the ecosystems, filling in the markets, people getting comfortable with the technology, adopting it. But it's a one-way trend because the benefits are just so massive, right? And the existing system needs a serious upgrade, needs updating.
So just in terms of your major clients, in the bio, even people that you're potentially having conversations with, are big companies, the likes of E&, or, ADNOC in Abu Dhabi, and also the sovereigns. Is there an interest in building solutions on that or investing in solutions like this? Are they taking those digital asset bets yet?
Absolutely. So we're not as close to some of the corporates you've mentioned at the moment, but certainly all the major banks are investing in this very, very heavily. And then, as you say, the sovereign-linked entities as well. So we're seeing, huge amounts of interest from across the board, but sort of primarily in the financial space still.
So, of course, you're now been around for almost 10 years. You probably don't really need the kind of early capital, etc. But as a startup, which is either starting out or just beginning its series, whatever, are there family offices or venture capital funds, etc., that you see in the DIFC that are interested in investing in this space? So I'm primarily looking at an audience that's coming from India as a startup or from other parts of the world. Is there investable capital for digital assets, for tokenization solutions, for blockchain technology?
Yeah, no, absolutely there are. So, this region, again, one of the big attractions here is not just the the regulatory environment and some of the business environment, but also the capital that's here, whether through family offices, corporate entities, VCs increasingly. So, the VC activity has gone up massively in this region recently, and I would assume that's going to continue as more and more companies set up here and seek to build from here. So no, I think if you're a young startup, this would be a great place to start.
And what advice, if I was a startup coming from India, say in any of these spaces,
Yeah.
what would be the advice that you would give me for setting up, for procuring clients, for making sure that I know which free zone gives me the sort of best conditions, etc.? What are some of these things to keep in mind?
Yeah, so I would say when you're thinking about setting up your legal entity, shop around. There are a lot of different options. I think the different free zones give you different benefits and also focus on different areas. So whether it's the DIFC or DMCC, which is now I think extremely strong, and then there's an abundance of talent here increasingly, which is very good news. As we've said, the capital is here, and then the clients are here. So there's a receptivity to new technologies, adoption of new technologies here, which is difficult to replicate. So it's a fantastic sort of petri dish, if you're gonna try and test something and build a new business here.
So, I was just looking at one of the reports which said that in terms of the background of the founders, Dubai is the most diverse. I guess it's 200 nationalities, and about 33% of I think somewhere around that, digital asset space is made up by Indians. Yeah. So just a fun fact. That's not a question.
Yeah, I think I saw the same report on the way here. So we must be reading the same stuff. Yeah.
Super. So I think you mentioned the diamond case in terms of the tokenization, etc. But how do you see the tokenization space in Dubai in the next, say, 3 to 5 years? What are some of the assets that people should be looking at? What are some of the solutions which are required? Where is the challenge which a problem solving can be done for?
Yeah, so I think, from what we see, we think in the banking space there's going to be huge movement in the next couple of years, right? So the big banks are looking at this space very, very seriously now, in a way that maybe wasn't the case a couple of years ago. So we're engaging with the largest banks on tokenizing pretty much everything in their portfolio. So I think that's number one. I think, as you've called out, in the commodity space, I think we're going to see a movement. Again, Dubai has always been this hub of commodity trading and trade generally. So I think those kind of real world assets will definitely see progress. And then on the real estate side, I expect that to really scale quickly. So we're at the beginning stages of that, but once those marketplaces have been tested and they're shown to be secure, and they're shown to, we can enforce and address, investor rights, ownership rights, etc. Then I think that's going to scale extremely quickly in the next couple of years. So, as I said, pretty much every direction you look, I think we're going to see this. Yeah.
Super. And I think any city to be really called a global city needs to be beyond just work, right? You need to be able to work, you need to be able to play. And you mentioned in our conversation that there was a certain allure Dubai had to you for personal reasons. So I would ask you this. I know you're still new into the ecosystem, but what are some of the 3 things in Dubai that you really enjoy doing?
Yeah.
That you were surprised to find that they exist here, and then you would like to do it again? And what do you do to sort of unwind yourself? I know you're building a company, so you barely have any time.
Yeah.
But when you do?
Yeah, no, look, my family and I are loving being in Dubai already, right? So for us, just number one, opening the curtains and seeing the sunshine every day is huge. I'm not going to mention where we came from, but it wasn't the case where we came from. So that's already nice. The safety and security, I have a young son, so, him being able to ride his bike around and us not feel too worried about that is amazing for us. We're just loving exploring, right? We have so much to explore, so much to do, both in Dubai, but also, getting out of Dubai and hitting the road a bit. We were in Ras Al Khaimah over Christmas. We really love that, for example. So we feel there's probably 10 years worth of exploration here that we're embarking upon. So yeah, and in my free time, I try and do a bit of exercise, and when I can, I play around at golf. But as you say, not too much of that at the moment.
No, that's perfect. And I think there is something new in Dubai almost every week. So if you exhaust what's there, they'll keep building new stuff for you.
Yes.
So I'm going to go back to SettleMint in your work. And I know that blockchain platform is also an important part of the offering. Probably not as sort of used as the tokenization and sort of these kind of use cases.
Yeah.
But what sort of blockchain projects have you done? And how do you see this blockchain enterprise adoption going in not 3 years, then 5 years? Because again, I think that's the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, exactly. So an earlier version of our product, and we still have it was our blockchain platform. And that's really where we give institutions a very broad access to our platform, which allows them to build on blockchain, whatever they may want to. At the moment, as I say, asset tokenization is really the flavor of the year and the next few years. In the past, we've done a lot of supply chain traceability projects, a lot of sort of voter registration type projects, so public sector type projects, a lot of product passport projects. So there's many use cases and much utility from blockchain. It's just the ones where I think we're going to see the most adoption, partly because we're talking about mostly financial institutions that have budgets to invest into these new technologies, are really the asset tokenization ones, I think, initially. That said, I do think eventually we will come back to those sort of use cases again, but I think it was probably a little bit too early.
I think when we interact with the government entities, I think DP World was experimenting with, invoicing and financing and everything on their blockchain technologies. I know Ian And was doing something about blockchain, but these, as you say, are still really in the experimentation phase first. To the large scale rollout and then developing the guardrails around that has not really happened.
Yeah, exactly. And I think once these more financial and real world asset tokenization use cases really take off, I think it will inspire people to, who are not necessarily in those spaces, to go back and look and go, wait a minute, now I can settle my transactions in milliseconds. Wouldn't that be interesting and cool to be able to do that for things that we're looking at internally? So I think there'll be this sort of feedback loop, and people will be inspired to look again. But over the last 10 years, I think it was just a little bit too soon.
And I've generally seen with the startup ecosystem that startups that make it in the domain tend to help other startups to sort of come up. So you've got Ripple here, you've got Coinbase here, you've got SettleMint here. Is there something that you're looking to collaborate and then maybe build an incubation center for such sort of technologies that come up? Is there any move to that yet?
Yeah, so I think we're leveraging mostly the existing ones, right? So the IFC, for example, DMCC. I totally agree. I think, and I really like this about the digital asset space. Most people come at it from the perspective of partnership and looking to partner. The market is too young, too small, too nascent to get too sharp an elbow. When adoption helps everybody. So that's been a nice thing from the transition from investment banking to the tech world is generally people want to partner, work together, build together, and they kind of think of the world as win-win. So that's been very refreshing, and I think Dubai offers great opportunities for that. And as you say, all the major players in this space are here. And I know all of the guys here. So it's and I've been able to achieve that in less than 6 months. So I think it tells you something about how close knit and small the community is.
So I've always found Dubai, very collaborative, very non-hierarchical. Even coming from where I come from, and I will not say where I come from. There's a certain hierarchy which can't be breached. Here, reaching like you say, the government, the regulators, established big companies, it's not that difficult if you have an intelligent product or like a solution. Perfect. So I think one thing I'd like to dwell a little bit on is what are some of the mistakes that digital asset startups or tokenization startups or blockchain startups end up making when they're entering a new geography? And what is it that they should avoid when they come into this part of the world?
That's very interesting. So I think from a digital asset perspective and a blockchain perspective, and we're now through this phase, but I think the early years it was a little bit unfortunate in that there were there were some bad actors in the industry. It was, they were driven by individual greed, effectively, right? And we know the well-publicized, globally well-publicized sort of events. Now, I think we're through that now. And that's not to say that there aren't still, I'm sure, some bad actors here and there, but generally now, what people are looking at is the power of the underlying technology itself and how it can really be applied to use cases in production that have a real impact, right? So I think that was sort of one of the unfortunate things. When entering a new market, look, I think it's really about being open-minded, being inquisitive, being humble, having that humility that, look, you are entering a new market. There are different ways of doing business, in every place. You're going to have to meet people halfway, at least, right, in order to achieve things and succeed. And then just, again, I think looking at it through that prism of partnership, who can you partner with? How can you help? How can others help you? I think that's very powerful, and certainly that's what we try to do at SettleMint.
So if I were to ask you your individual investments in the world of stablecoins, tokenized assets, cryptocurrencies, what would be your 3 top recommendations?
Oh boy, I'm not giving investment advice for sure. And actually, my wife manages our small portfolio, so she would be a better person to ask. Look, I think this technology is going to take off, in a big way, and I think we're just at the beginning of that. So, finding companies that are well positioned in that space and who can add real utility and value, to the real world ultimately. I think that's kind of how I look at things. That's certainly why I was attracted to SettleMint and doing this job, is that I can see the impact that we can have through the amazing technology that exists and we've built. So that's sort of how I would look at which companies to back and which not.
Perfect. And because of your wealth of knowledge, this is, I promise, going to be like my last question out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Stablecoins have become a major area of tokenization. Massive amounts of, and there's this entire concept that they are re-dollarizing the world or whatever. But we're increasingly seeing stablecoins that are backed by local currencies. So we've got AD, and I know Saudi's thinking as well. There is a thought about India and stablecoins as well.
Yeah.
Do you think at some point of time there are going to be, and there's a gold-black stablecoin as well, where we're going to have a global south mechanism where stablecoins can be traded like bilateral mechanisms? But I know there's still American companies largely building it. But do you see a framework which is going to be more equitable and more easier to handle within the jurisdictions of sovereign countries?
Yeah. So at the moment, obviously, by some degree, the largest volumes are US dollar-backed stablecoins. For obvious reasons, and that's great as well, actually. But this sort of south to south, transactions, facilitating those through stable coins where you may, you have to go through this kind of ridiculous system, correspondent banking system, where it's, maybe 3-4 different correspondent banks and everybody's taking a cut and it takes however long and, you need to wait, days, sometimes weeks for your payments to arrive. I mean, stable coins solve that in one fell swoop, right? So I think that's the sort of south to south flows where you don't have that those immediate settlements which you might have in the more Western markets, financial markets. I think that's a super exciting use case for blockchain. So I would see that only continuing to grow. And in fact, we've had a number of discussions here with very interested counterparties on whether we could help them build something like that. So, even that is an indicator of, I think people see the power of this, being able to settle something very, very, very quickly through stable coins rather than go through extremely outdated correspondent banking system.
So if you had $10 billion and you had to invest in 3 top solutions, I'm not saying companies, etc., for the next 10 years, what would you bet on?
Yeah, asset tokenization, number 1, possibly 1, 2, 3. But certainly the tokenizing of pretty much all assets over time, I think is undeniably going to happen. And that's where, we're betting as a company. So yeah, I think stablecoins, we've obviously had the year of stablecoins last year, a so-called year of stablecoins. We've only seen continued growth. So I would see that. And then a third, again, probably the asset tokenization of the real world assets. I think that's going to be super interesting, right? As more and more companies look at the technology and think, wow, okay, if you can put properties, in Saudi Arabia, for example, or Dubai, on the blockchain, why can't you put oil and gold and diamonds? And you talked about earlier, derivative transactions, futures, etc. It's all. I mean, the impact of that is going to be huge. Yeah.
And so also we've been talking about a Dubai-India corridor, tech corridor, etc. Are you also looking at India as a potential market? And what are some of the exciting opportunities in this corridor?
Yeah, so we've done a number of large projects in India already in our time. We did a huge, this is a cool application of blockchain. We did a project with the state of Jharkhand on distribution of seeds to farmers, being underpinned with blockchain and being able to verify what had gone where and so on. It was 16 million farmers. India, again, I saw recently some of the MPs in Parliament in India making the point that we need to sort of push the case on blockchain. So I would expect to see, just given the structure of the economy there, the huge size, the development of technologies there, I would expect to see massive developments when it comes to blockchain in India. We'd love to help with that. Yeah, in terms of the corridor, I mean, I have colleagues here who are Indian, and we travel back and forth, and so that's very much alive as well. I think sort of again maybe looking to what's being developed and incubated here, and then taking it home, as it were.
I mean, this is what we tell our clients all the time. Think of building in Dubai for the region, for the larger corridors, because then there's a lot of synergies, friendly countries, and you can test solutions, etc.
Yeah.
So I think that is enough of my grilling. That we'll call it a wrap. Thank you so much, Adam. That was super, super informative. I have 10,000 other questions, but I think for the sake of the podcast, I will wrap this up now. Thank you, everybody. It's a wrap for the Live, Work, and Play podcast in Dubai for Economic Times. I'm Shraddha Bhandari signing off with Adam. Thank you.